wander around a little bit. I have copies of the KU core booklet that, if you don't have one, I understand the university was stingy in passing these out to all those that really should receive it. So I'll just start these around, and as you take one if you wish, there's about 15 copies there. So if you want one, I know where they are, and I can provide them for you. What I'd like to do today is give you a little bit of a sense of how we got here, how we got to the point of having a new KU core curriculum. And what I'd like to do is give you a little history of where we started and how we've moved through the process of changing the curriculum at the institution. In 2009-2010, I was asked by the Chancellor to chair a task force on the retention and timely graduation of students at the University of Kansas. It was an observation that students were leaving the university more frequently than people were comfortable with. We lose about 20% of our freshmen after the first year, and we're not graduating students with the rapidity that we should be. The 5-year graduation rate is only about 66%, I believe. So she wanted to have us look at what would be some of the problems that were affecting these important parameters of being successful as an institution. And one of the things that came out of that was that the current, as Bob pointed out, 30-year-old set of requirements in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences was out of step with what was happening at most major institutions. And so we began the process in the following year through the strategic planning work to basically see what we could do about transforming KU's undergraduate program and turning it into something that was appropriate for the students of the 21st century. And so during the 2010-2011 academic year, I think you may all be aware there was a significant strategic planning process across the institution. And one work group that was part of that was a work group that I called EEE, Energizing the Educational Environment. And one subgroup of that large 50-person work group focused exclusively on the KU, the undergraduate curriculum, and the parameters of it and how it might be updated. What that group came up with was a significant change in the way that we were going through undergraduate education at KU. And what we did was worked very systematically to work with the principles that we wanted to follow in changing the curriculum. We wanted to make the educational goals that we had at the university more visible and more linked to curricula. In the mid-1990s, there was a Blue Ribbon Committee that got together and established the general education goals of the university. Those are still on the KU KU webpage. You can find them. However, they've been reasonably static. They've never been incorporated into a curriculum. And that was a real failing of the institution, that they create and develop these institutional goals for general education and then not link them to what the undergraduates were expected to do. So we wanted to change that. We also wanted to involve the full KU community in thinking through and modifying the way that we thought about KU's undergraduate experience. And then we wanted to look across other institutions and see what our aspirational peers were doing with regard to undergraduate education and see where KU fit or didn't fit with what was the trend and what was happening around the nation. So we did that. It was a wonderful committee. And and it worked very hard. We surveyed faculty, staff, and I believe retirees were surveyed at the same time. The surveys were supposed to go out to everyone. We got more than 700 responses, all very thoughtful. Well, most of them very thoughtful. That we used to drive the discussion that we had, and we asked then the departments to consider revision of the KU core goals, or the goals for general education at KU, and to help us prioritize them. And the committee in the mid-1990s had 6 goals for general education, and not too surprisingly, we ended up with 6 goals for general education after the process. And if you compare the old goals and the new goals, there's not that much difference. There's a little more emphasis on global, there's a little more emphasis on U.S. diversity and thinking about the students' fit into the society. There's a little more focus on integration and creativity in the new set of goals, but they're not that different. We also then compared general education systems across all of the AAU institutions. And what we ended up with was a synthesis that we could build on. And instead of having the very decentralized system that's currently in place, where every single school and the college has its own set of general education requirements, we thought it was very important that all students have a sense of what a KU education should be. And so we wanted it to be a university-wide rather than widely distributed and variable set of expectations. We also wanted the curriculum to finally be based on the goals that we have for general education at KU. And so one of the things that you'll see in this booklet is there are no courses listed. The KU core is really not a curriculum. The KU core is a set of goals and a set of learning outcomes. And what we expect is that students will see this from whether they're engineers or music majors or architects or English majors or even biology majors. And will know then that the fundamentals that they would be building on would be started with the kinds of goals and learning outcomes that are presented by the KU core. We focused, as not too surprisingly, on fundamental skills, on basic knowledge, and on developing values for students. And we wanted them to know what it was that the institution thought they would get out of their education. And we also wanted to help them link directly why they were taking a particular course and what goal of their general education was providing. That was a tall order, but that's what we wanted to do. So the new set of revised educational goals that we came up with have been circulated widely. The first one builds skills of critical thinking and quantitative literacy. The second strengthens oral and written communication. The third develops a background of knowledge across a wide range of fundamental disciplines. The fourth provides emphasis on human diversity, global awareness, and global culture. The fifth institutes in students that they should be practicing ethical and socially responsible activities. And the sixth is really a capstone kind of experience where we expect all students to be able to take the knowledge that they've gained and integrate it across their studies and be creative. So fairly basic set of expectations that we had. And what we then did with them was try to develop a link between the goals and a set of learning outcomes that would allow the students to achieve those goals. And we wanted to also make sure that we had in place a process that would coordinate the courses with the learning outcomes and ensure that the courses met those learning outcomes explicitly through the curricula that they were developing. And then finally, and this has gotten us press around the nation and even from Canada, we've heard, we wanted to incorporate review of the courses, and that professors teaching those courses would need to preserve and demonstrate that the students in those courses had actually achieved the learning outcomes that they said they did. And so make the whole thing visible and obvious at all levels to the students, to those that were looking at the institution from the outside, and to each other, so that we could have a better sense of the totality of the experience. So what happened next was that in the fall of 2011, each of the goals was assigned a committee. And for lack of a better term, we called them satellite committees. And each of these committees then took the goals, and the work that they did was just remarkable. They took those goals and they developed for each of them a set of learning outcomes and a set of evaluation opportunities and a set of requirements that would be associated with each of those goals. Because they worked as individual committees, of course, each of the reports was a little bit different and went into things a little bit differently, delved into the process a little bit differently. And so in the spring, we had yet another committee, a very large committee called the Transition Committee that I chaired, that finalized the learning outcomes and the criteria, put them into a common voice, and that's what you see in this booklet. The last several pages are basically the report of that Transition Committee, which tried to take all of the good work of the satellite committees and turn it into a common voice with a common set of goals. So that's the history. And what also that Transition Committee did was formed for the first time at this institution a University Core Curriculum Committee, the university's first university-wide curriculum committee. And I remember very distinctly sitting down with the chancellor at one time and saying, you know, we're going to need a university curriculum committee. And I thought I was going to drop her jaw off the floor because she couldn't believe that we didn't have one and wasn't even aware that we didn't have one and couldn't imagine an institution that didn't. But it really speaks to the decentralized nature of KU and how it's functioned for a long period of time. So we now have a university curriculum committee, but it is focused solely on the KU core. It is definitely not trying to impact the individual degrees. It is only to coordinate the core curriculum. So, to build the core curriculum, finally, having already established the goals and outcomes, which are not a curriculum, we now need to link the courses and ways of achieving those goals and outcomes. And so, the Transition Committee defined that each of these goals had a certain number of units associated with it. And a unit was defined as either a course or an educational experience or a combination of courses and educational experiences. And then we assigned to each of the goals the number of units that we thought they should, that would be required for students to meet those particular goals. So, for example, critical thinking and quantitative literacy requires 2 units, whereas written and oral communication requires 3 units, 2 of which are written communication units, and so on through the whole set of goals. The University Core Curriculum Committee was established, as I mentioned, and in doing so, we shared this with university governance. We got their endorsement of this new committee. And the members of the University Core Curriculum Committee are elected from each of the schools and from the college, and now include a representation from the KU Med Center, which, as of a few weeks ago, has decided that it, too, wants all of its undergraduates to incorporate the KU Core into their undergraduate programs. So finally, we are becoming what has been promoted for a number of years, a one university, at least at the undergraduate level. And that, to me, is one of the biggest things that we've managed to accomplish. This committee also is representative in that it has students on it, and it has members from the libraries and ex officio members from the provost office, so they still let me attend. This past summer of 12, we began the process of linking courses with the KU Core. And we went through the courses that had been used to satisfy the general education requirements in various schools in the college. We identified about 700 courses that had been used over that period, and we recommended what we called fast tracking of those courses as representing good ways to meet KU Core goals and learning outcomes. As a side issue, that fast tracking process turned into a slow boat process. As you might imagine, once the faculty got their teeth into it, they slowed it down considerably. We finally finished it in the fall, end of the fall, December of last year, so it's taken a while. We developed an online submission process. If you go to the KU Core webpage and click on Nominate Your Course Here, it shows you a way to walk into demonstrating that the course that you're proposing will meet the KU Core goals and learning outcomes. And we established an approval process that recognizes the decentralization of the institution. Courses are nominated from departments. They are then reviewed by school or college curriculum committees, and finally go to the UCCC, as we call it, for final approval. You get tired, you get hung up in the number of C's in that committee. So, departments described how those courses and experiences would enable students to achieve the learning outcomes. And we noted that it was possible, certainly for some courses, to meet more than one learning outcome, depending on the curriculum that they had. But we limited the number of that students could use a course for only one of those learning outcomes. So no double dipping, as we say. We wanted to make sure that all sections of a course, which has multiple sections, would achieve the goals and outcomes that we wanted them to. And finally, we wanted the UCCC to be a shepherd of the process rather than some sort of Spanish Inquisition. We wanted the courses that came in to not be just rejected, but to be very interactive with departments and say, this looks really good, but you might need to improve this piece in order for it to be part of the KU Core. And we've been working on that. So the process so far has gone very, very well. We have something on the order of 1,000 courses that are either approved or in the process of being approved for the KU Core. And they're all listed on the KU Core webpage. You can organize them by department, you can organize them by goal, you can organize them by whatever you want, so that you can get a sense of what's matching where. So, one of the things that I said was important as part of the KU Core, and one of the things that's gotten us recognized around the nation, is that we want to make sure that we continually review and assess the courses and how they meet the KU Core learning outcomes. And so we are asking all courses that are part of the KU Core curriculum to preserve direct evidence of student achievement. And this is not hard. We give exams all the time. Preserving questions and student answers to them that meet KU Core learning outcomes is what we're anticipating faculty will do. And then either through electronic means or through simple Xeroxing of those, and a sample of those, they can preserve evidence that the students in their classes are actually achieving the learning outcomes that they say they are. And then on a periodic basis, the UCCC will review each of those courses, all 1,000 of them, and make sure that we are protecting the integrity of the system and as well the value of the program to undergraduates. Where are we going? This spring, we are completing the integration of the KU Core into all of the different majors around the campus. Many schools and the college are demonstrating how their degrees will meet the expectations of the KU Core. We're working with catalog copy and student information systems to build the infrastructure necessary to monitor the KU Core and the student enrollment and achievement of it. And we're beginning to orient new students. We have a new orientation guide that incorporates many of the elements of the KU Core, so the students coming in will have a sense of what they're getting into. This is all in preparation for the launch of the KU Core for all incoming students in the fall of 2013. We have allowed for all current students that wish to opt into the KU Core. This is not something that they are required to do, but they may if they wish. And knowing that there are transfer students out there following the old curriculum, we went the other direction and said, well, if you come to the institution with 2 years behind you already, and that 2 years does not map very well to the KU Core, you can opt out of the KU Core. So we're trying to take consideration of all of the students involved and make sure that we're meeting their needs. So I guess I'd like to think that at this point we do have a renewed beginning for KU undergraduates. For the first time, we have courses linked to educational goals. For the first time, we are making students much more aware of those learning outcomes that they're trying to achieve and the courses that are associated with helping them do so. For the first time, we have degree-specific and major requirements across the institution that coordinate with a common set of goals and learning outcomes. And we are providing then what I would think as a foundation on which each of these degrees can then build. The KU Core is not the last point in any career of any student, but it is a foundation and it is a common set of elements that we hope KU students will appreciate. There we go. Okay. We also want to make this learning visible for the students. We want to also preserve and share evidence of student achievement of these foundational goals. And so I hope we have put in place a new start for many of the undergraduates that will be going through KU. And we hope also that this will help students achieve the goals that they have and progress through the institution in a more timely fashion. And that's where we started 3 years ago with thinking through this whole process. So it's been a long process. It's beginning to look like it might actually happen. There have been a lot of points along the way where the potholes have been dipped into and we've clawed our ways out of them. But I'd like to think that what we have achieved is something that is forward motion for KU. So with that, I've stayed within my half hour. I'd like to answer any questions that you have about this program as someone that's been embedded in it for far too long. So, back there.
A couple of terms are like specific information, what they mean. A lot of these terms are new to me. What is quantitative literacy? And could you tell me what a learning outcome is? And give me a specific example.
Quantitative literacy is basically math. Yeah. There's lots of different terms for it. I've seen it referred to as quantitative something else. It's trying to capture the use of not just the learning of math, but the application of math in physics and chemistry and other sciences, for example, or even statistics in psychology and such. So it's broader than math courses, but it's focused on the application of the other term for it is numeracy, which think is silly. But yeah, that didn't work. Quantitative literacy, at least, you can get a sense of it. A learning outcome is basically a result of taking a course. And so a learning outcome associated with written communication is an improvement in the quality of the experience that students have in actually learning how to write and embedding that into the course, and therefore achieving a goal. So a learning outcome is a path to learning, to achieving a goal. You had a question?
What percentage, in terms of the total hours that a graduate would be expected to have, will the Corps provide? Give or take.
Give or take. And that's one of the more interesting things about the KU Corps, and again, what sets it apart from other programs. If you do it strictly by courses, it requires 36 hours. And that's a foundation on which, for example,
36 hours?
36 credit hours. So 12 units times 3 is 36, strictly by courses. One of the things that we've built into this is the opportunity to have educational experiences, such as doing undergraduate research or studying abroad, to actually count toward KU Core, and they may or may not carry credit. So the maximum is 36. What the programs across the institution are doing is starting with that. For example, the college is currently developing a revision of its Bachelor of Arts degree, and it's starting with the KU Core and saying, yeah, but we need to add a language to that, we need another math course. So 36 is the basement level of if you do it only through courses, but each degree is adding on to that, building on that foundation.
And this will be true of every college and department of the university?
Yes, music. Common Core.
Professional schools too?
Professional schools too. Business, engineering, yeah. All schools that have undergraduate programs, pharmacy. Yeah.
How will it work like with the requirements like of the professional school students having enough room to complete the course and the 101 many hours?
Absolutely. One of the things that we're doing right now is, and we call it integration or mapping of the core onto the requirements that are already present in all of those professional schools. And what we've discovered is we need to add nothing to their requirements. There's enough flexibility in there so that if they're required for their degrees to have 3 social science courses, which many of them are, we require actually, for one of them to be transformed into a diversity course or something like that. So there's plenty of flexibility across all of the degrees. All we're doing is helping them refine them and define them a little more specifically to achieve the goals that we have for all undergraduates. So we're across engineering, for example, which are very tightly defined degree programs, we're adding nothing to any of those degrees as far as number of hours. Yeah.
One can't make this kind of transition without gains and losses. From your perspective, because it has to be pretty individual, I think.
Yes.
What are the gains and what are the losses? That's one question. The other question I have is, what will be the role of the advisor in this new system? Because I would assume that role would change. The more I become acquainted with it, appreciably.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. We have a series of training sessions starting next week for all advisors. We're inviting them all in. We're meeting on Friday with a group of advising leaders to establish an agenda for those meetings. We've had a committee working exclusively on helping advisors transition to an understanding that they no longer have a set of columns with courses that they can point to and say, take those courses. It's a much more individualized process.
Well, it seems to me that it would actually result in advising.
Yes, yes.
And I was here for 35 years, and I don't think I didn't experience much advising.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And the other thing we're hoping is, and we're going to promote this, is that programs will give us recommendations of what I'm calling themed course clusters. Take these and you get a background in X, Y, or Z. It also allows you to complete your requirements for your degree and or the KU core. You asked for pluses and minuses. A minus is that we no longer have that kind of lockstep process of being able to, I call it the sushi menu of opportunities. No, it's much more individualized. It's going to be a much more advisor-driven process. And I think some of the advisors are going to get a dash of cold water in their face when they think about how they're going to change what they're doing. And I think that's a good thing, but it's also a difficult thing.
Because there are some folks who could make good advisors and some...
Yes, yes. And we've met with some of the advisors already, and some of them get it. They get it immediately. And they say, this is exciting. And I've met with admissions people, and they just started foaming at the mouth because they actually had something to sell to incoming students now for the first time academically. So there's a lot of pluses to this, and especially the plus of having students understand why they're taking a particular course to allow them to achieve the goals that they have.
It all seems to be particularly heavy on people and evaluating the outcome, that kind of thing. And who's paying for this? Are the faculty going to get raises in salary? I'm concerned about the faculty, on whom these burdens are going. I'm sorry. I'm glad I'm retired.
I'm on a search committee right now that is hiring our first ever assessment specialist.
What?
Assessment specialist, who will help us understand what it is to review courses and develop primary evidence of achievement.
And when you say outcome, are you still going to use the same grade system?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
Because my feeling is if somebody is going to successfully achieve the desired outcome, they shouldn't be able to pass off a D, for example.
Right. Right. No,
Any thought to going to a pass-fail system for everything?
After I'm dead.
Well, evaluating is going to be so personnel heavy.
There's still going to be grading in all the courses. That's going to be different and parallel to the evaluation of achieving learning outcomes. So each course will have a curriculum, part of which will be devoted to meeting the learning outcomes that they've said they will, and part of it will be the content of that particular course.
May I ask another question?
I know you've already had yours.
I'm concerned about, there have been so many committees and so many people, blah, blah, blah.
Don't I know it?
But what concerns me is the people who have been chosen to approve the courses. Who are they?
They are elected from each of the schools and from the college by members of the faculty.
By the department.
By the departments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are nominated and then elected. Yeah, they were nominated and then elected.
How do you keep the UCC from being viewed as a cop?
Yeah.
Part of their role is, just like any curriculum committee, to review the curriculum. It's their job.
Well, we're so unused to that around here. I can't imagine that you're not going to have some trouble with it being viewed as heavy-handed cop.
Well, any course that's taught need not be part of the KU core curriculum.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that much freedom.
Right.
And there's no pressure to do that. There's no requirement to do that. So if you choose to do that, then you will be influenced by the system that we've put in place.
It's an enormous relief to me. I'm sure because the university, I married into it. My husband was a professor, dean of the college, responsible for all the study abroad programs.
Oh, yeah.
A long time ago. And we just thought it was wonderful that you could look out and have, and my undergraduate majors were English, philosophy, and geology. And George made jokes about Barber's Rock. Well, they're in rock, right here.
Yeah.
Right now. And so I'm glad to hear that you're still saying to the students, this is the world out here. We have arbitrary names and dates, but the whole thing is part of the planet we live on.
Well, and one of the goals that we have is to get more
Exactly.
people out into that world.
And so, as I said, I had undergraduate majors, English, philosophy, and geology. And I was, I'm glad that Barber's Rocks was sort of a joke, but I had just exactly what is called for right here. You're still, this is the planet we live on, there are others out there.
Yeah.
But to have any sense of what this place, this planet is and consists of, I'm enormously relieved to know that this is still going on.
A portion of the total course offerings are part of the core. There's a whole bunch of courses that won't be a part of the core, that will be service courses or whatever courses the departments might require. So what's the proportion of core to overall?
I'm going to hazard a really wild guess, probably a third.
Oh.
But that may be off by orders of magnitude. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not something I've calculated, but I think it'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah.
And the fact is, we're not going to be done with enrolling more courses into the KU core. We're starting with a big batch, but it's going to be continuing. There are going to be courses that rotate in and rotate out.
Yeah, this is just kind of ECM specific. We have 4 alternative breaks, which are probably in some ways as quote, strenuous or more so than the KU, but it says it's a requirement to take 1 credit course. Is that going to be the case, say, for us to offer alternative break, that person would have to go into a 1 credit course?
If you follow the parameters that are listed there, yes. The other thing is that what's written there is obviously, and I can say this because I'm a biologist, going to evolve. And already has gone through a little bit of change.
Okay.
So as we start implementing the whole process, we will be looking carefully at what does and what doesn't work the way we think it would when we first conceived of it, and then modifying it appropriately to enable the right things to get into the right places.
Well, that's fair enough. I was just thinking that we need to be alerted to
Yeah, I mean, that was the most specific set of requirements, I think, because we had a certain number of almost examples that were being inserted as experiences to meet that social responsibility learning outcome.
So who would we go to get those specifics?
There is on campus now a Center for Experiential Learning, and I would work directly with them.
Yeah, we work with him already.
Okay, then you're in the right place.
Thank you.
When I first started negotiating with KU about providing a professorship, I was kind of discouraged because they had no knowledge of something that I had knowledge of from a higher degree I received in the 70s. They had no knowledge of a multidisciplinary degree. Is that going to fit in here anywhere?
Well, yeah, and we still have them. I mean, there are interdisciplinary degrees, Latin American studies, for example, that exist. And what I'm hoping is the whole focus here on interdisciplinary and on looking across fields will just feed that kind of outward thinking. And I think that's the way the world is going right now, with a lot more emphasis on interaction than on focus in a particular degree. But that's just
At
my
my
opinion.
next negotiating session, I'll just wave this at them.
You do that.
And they say, they've told me it's possible. Now,
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great.
Don't do it quite like that. They might.
Well,
Okay.
I have an effect on people.
Okay.
Yes, you haven't told us much about the content of the core curriculum, so let me bring up one thing. The students will become voters if they are not already. What courses in the core will help the students become better voters, citizens?
Well, one of the things that we've built into the core is more emphasis on human diversity, more emphasis on ethics, more emphasis on social responsibility, directly associated with expecting students to achieve those. And so I think through that, that's 3 goals right there that are all focused on elements of, I think, what you're getting at.
So I'm thinking that the courses that included that would cover government and politics.
Certainly they can. There isn't a goal for civics or that sort of thing, no. But
Not a goal?
there isn't a goal for that in particular.
Well, in the booklet, it is specifically mentioned.
Yeah.
It's mentioned civics as part of that.
As part of it, but it's not the goal itself.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, but as we're putting this together, we're thinking about that kind of, again, integration across the various elements that turn a floundering student into a successful voting citizen.
Because that's going to apply to everyone regardless of what their major is.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Will students be able to keep track of their progress through the web or computer enroll them pay or their KU
There's a degree progress report that is part of the advising process and that is being programmed as we speak by the student information systems, computer gurus who know all this stuff. We are giving them templates that will allow them to chart the progress of each student, and each student has his or her own degree progress report that they have access to through the web.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question, and I know you've addressed the desire for more diversity and all. When, say, a high school student is picking up just general information, and they see the statement, a core, a beginning for everybody, are they going to question whether or not if they're a little bit off the beaten path, that they're going to be coming to a university that's going to have a specific goal that they don't want necessarily? I mean, it's a matter of semantics, I'm sure. But if you only saw just the beginning, is there some place where they could be reassured that that core is going to be an expansive kind of experience where they can see it right away up front without going through all of the explanation?
Yeah, I think if you look at the KU Core webpage, and do this and let me know if I'm
Well,
just
it's
being.
something that comes to me that I don't want to see KU or people out there thinking about coming to KU think if I go to KU, they're going to put all the mold, everybody in the same mold. And I'm certain that's not what your
No.
goal is, but is that going to be perceived in that way?
I think it's just the opposite of what it currently is. I think we are doing much more to individualize an educational program for the students. And one of the things that the admissions people found so attractive to what we were doing was that they could go out into the community and sell this as you can chart your own individual path through your education at the University of Kansas, come out the other end with a common set of skills, knowledge, and values that you've built for yourself.
Well, I don't want to see us lose that individuality.
Yeah. No, I think we've gone just the other way in enhancing individuality with the new program. Yeah.
I think what you just said, though, leads me back to the advising role. I was someone, as a student, who found that I had a lot of interests that didn't focus in any particular direction. And that was difficult because I think there was lack of an effective advisory role. I would love to focus, if I were doing it again, on this core and these goals. But then the question would come up at some point, well, this has got to fit into to a degree and a place to go. And it seems to me that, yes, the advising role had better be strong, or else you're going to get some students who get frustrated and you're not leading toward this retention and graduation that you want and the students want.
Well, and one of the things that we want to do is empower the students to actually think of themselves as an individual and build their own programs. And what we're challenging each of the departments and degree programs with doing is generating the core as a foundation and building on that for each of these programs. So the benefit is you start out with the foundation that you're getting through the KU core, and maybe through that you get an inkling of the interests that you have and the talents that you have, and can pursue those through the degree programs. And again, it is going to be important for advisors to sit down with the students, present to them the options that they have, and make sure that they understand them.
Things for the students.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the whole advising thing seems to me to be an incredibly huge obstacle to making this work.
We hope it's going to be an avenue for making it work.
Okay, I know, I'm out of touch with the language, I realize that.
We don't like obstacles.
I know, I got that message even.
What they say in Star Trek, resistance is futile.
But as I say, what I would worry about is seeing KU go to a system of professional advisors.
We're already there.
Well, I worked in the Freshman Sophomore Advising Center back in the day, but I was a faculty member.
Yes.
And there were other faculty members. But now, I don't think there are any faculty members left.
There's still a couple left.
But
we also just hired a brand new director of the Undergraduate
Yeah.
Advising Center and a new director of the Student and Academic Services in the college.
I know you've hired. I understand all that.
Replacements.
I know.
And what I've watched is the two of them working very closely together for the first time since we had the Freshman Sophomore Advising Center, which is really nice.
But the thing that fascinates me above all, I think, about this is all this emphasis on the undergraduate, okay, which is super as far as I'm concerned, because that was my concern when I was here. But what I hear is that what the provost really is interested in is the graduate program. And more of the undergraduate classes are going to be taught by GTAs. In my own department, for example, and we're talking, classics here, all the courses to proficiency in Latin, I think this last year, were taught by GTAs, and we're talking only MA candidates here. Classics doesn't have a PhD, and what they're trying to do now is make themselves an incubator of MA candidates for the Ivy League so that they can glorify their own reputations, because they think that's what Jeffy wants. How do we deal with that?
Well, I think the evidence is that the provost has been incredibly supportive of this whole process. He has helped enormously in working with some of the more problematic units that did not wish to sign on to it. So, quite to the contrary, I think he's been one of the biggest motivators to helping it actually function.
It seems like one of the consequences of the old general education distribution requirements thing was that it generated huge classes, and then students would use those huge classes to meet a given requirement. Do you think this core curriculum thing is going to have any influence on class size? Do you think it is going to have any influence on pedagogy? Like, will teachers be asked to become more capable as teachers? We have lots of teachers who are great researchers but shouldn't be in the classroom. Will this have any impact there?
By itself, no.
That's what I thought.
But at the same time that we're doing, there's so much going on. At the same time that we're doing this, we have a whole program on course redesign that I've been part of as well. We are in the process right now of hiring 2 postdoctoral individuals who will be helping to redesign some of the courses to be more active in their learning process, even if they're large. And so turning large classes into effectively smaller classes, even though we can't afford to have that many small classes offered, we can redesign the courses to be more aware of the value of students being actively
Awareness of the issue.
aware of their own learning and participatory in their own learning.
There's an
So
arbitrariness.
the university is actually funding this in a major way.
Do you know how many new offices and people have been created in the process of developing core? And how
No.
many, this is interesting, because I know that the 2 people you just mentioned are both men. Are they
Right.
not?
Larry Fillion and Randall
Right.
Brumfeld.
How are we affirmative action-wise on this score? We're hiring, it seemed to me, I wrote a nasty little note to the chancellor one
Really?
time about this. No. I was saying, you know, I see, something came out with a bunch
The
of
first
picture of
female
white
chancellor
male.
of the institution.
Yeah, but, you know, that,
what?
she's icing on the, you know, she's just up there as a figurehead. But I'm talking about,
I beg to differ.
I saw something came out with a bunch of, you know, people who had been appointed, and they were all white males.
There's a
I
lot
thought
of us-
we were
There's
past-
a lot of us out there.
I thought that we were past that time at the university.
Yeah. I wasn't involved with the hiring of
I
either
know,
of
but
those
I
folks.
say, it's something that,
Yeah.
do they think about this?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's part of the whole process. And as far as the chancellor is concerned, I think she is gently controlling the process that we're going through right now. She has been very hands-on at certain points that have been important in making sure that we are making the progress we need to be. And she's another one that has been a champion of the changes that are being involved. So far from being a figurehead, she is very hands-on at critical times. It's been fun to watch. And I've been here a long time too, so I've seen the ebb and flow of effective leadership. Mostly the flow.
I judge you have been a champion of this process as well. I thank you
Yes.
for it.
There have been a lot of fun aspects of it. There have been some real frustrating ones, but I think the greatest part of it has been, if you look at the insert in this thing, the number of individuals that have contributed to it really meaningfully and very thoughtfully. It's just been so gratifying, and that keeps me going.
Could you characterize, I can't imagine there are faculty who would read this and just become apoplectic. What is, when that happens, when a faculty member is just outraged by this, what is the tone of the tenor of the issue? What is it that is kind of stuck in their throat sideways?
Often it's self-serving. It's, you're changing things, I don't like you changing things. Often it's, you're going to change things and it's going to ruin my department, because you're changing the resource space for a lot of the way that we're teaching. I haven't had a lot of kickback on the concept, and the concept is real, and the concept is right, and the concept is student-oriented. And as long as it's thought of in that way, it's really hard to argue against. So it's more selfish interests than real concern that I've seen. The process also has been, to some people's minds, very fast, and they get excited about that. We need to think about this more. And my response consistently to them is, we've been screwing undergraduate students for far too long. It's time to stop. And that usually shuts them up as well. So not a lot of negativism on the concept, but quite a bit on the how you're going to do it and what's it going to do to me kind of response.
You know, I have absolutely no problem with, you know, changing curriculum. But the thing, why does it have to be so gimmicky? And, you know, why do we have to have bold aspirations?
Oh, yeah, well,
You know,
marketing.
why does it have to all be PR?
Yeah,
You think-
energizing the
you
educational
really
environment.
think
I invented that one.
Do you think the students are going to read this?
Well, they haven't been, well, I don't know.
You know,
I
think
hope the
would-
students are at least going to be more aware of why they're taking what they're taking and
I
what
just
it's
hope
going
that
for.
it's, as I say, what offends me, I think, more than anything, is just the language. It is so awful. It is so,
You have a problem with KU Core?
no.
Oh, good.
But I have problems
I invented that
and, you
one,
know,
too.
pushing this button for goal and this put, and it's going to produce this outcome. It's all, you know.
And a lot of it's been learning for me as well, trying to look out into the beyond Lawrence and thinking through where we need to be positioned to be competitive with other institutions.
And they're all gimmicky too?
A lot of them are a lot more gimmicky than we are, that have come up with special programs associated with their, what's the one I like? Oh, the I program, capital I. They have a whole bunch of words that are all begin with the letter I, and they are a special program that's part of undergraduate education, and the I experience or something like that. There's more things out there than, I mean, this is nothing.
I would guess that if people recognize the enormous kind of IT literacy that students have who come to KU right now, if you do your website with that in mind, they'll be able to navigate that without any difficulty at all.
Well, and there has been thought to branding, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
to make it
Well-
outreach to the community.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I want to respond to that. I propose that if the language seems offensive, it's not because of this kind of sincere use of the language. It's because marketers have appropriated that language in order to try and influence people. And we now can't tell the difference, maybe.
You know, what student is going to, if I walked out on campus and said, what does experiential learning mean to you?
Oh, a lot of them.
What has been interesting on these committees, for example, is the students are the ones that brought us the concept of experiential learning, and we said, "What's that?"
Well, a lot of them have been doing it in high school.
So it's quite the opposite.
Oh.
Yeah.
Kyle for years. Well, thank you so much for today. I really
My pleasure.
appreciate it.
I welcome